This video is all about drawing fight scenes. We'll use a series of very simple gesture drawings to show you all of the tips and tricks and techniques that I've learned over the years of having to draw fight scene after fight scene and make them as visually interesting as I possibly can. I'm David Finch. I've been a comic book artist for over 25 years. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe and share with your friends. We're going to go ahead and start with a very simple concept that can make a big difference to the flow of your fight scene. And that is changing your arm of action that your character is using to throw a punch or throw a kick from panel to panel. So I've got my figure and he's punching down at a character that is lying on the ground. And we're drawing this really simply just so we can get a lot across. I want to cover a lot of ground today with this, so I'm going to keep these drawings pretty gestural. So he's punching down through here, and then in the next panel, I'm going to draw the same scene, and I'm going to draw the opposing arm punching. Again, just very, very simple drawings. Now I want to have the same leg extended and the other leg back the way that I had it before. I'm going to bring this arm up. And my proportions changed just a little bit because it's such a simple sketch. So something I could adjust. But the general concept is if I show a panel where I'm punching with one arm, in the next panel I want to punch with the other arm, and then it reads like a punch is being thrown, as opposed to showing multiple panels where the same punch is being thrown. It just reads like you're looking at the same image again. And the same thing works if I was to close in on the scene, and I'll draw a panel here. And here's my scene punching. From here, I'm going to do a bit more of a close-up. Here's my head. Here's my arm punching through. And because I'm punching again with this arm, it still works. So even though I've changed the angle a little bit, I've zoomed in, I want to make sure that whatever angle I choose the opposing arm for the next panel and on through. And the same thing really works when you have a character running. If I have a character, try and get that head in there a little bit better. If I have a character running in one panel, in the next panel, I'm going to want to show that character running with the other foot forward, and then it'll read like that character is running and you have fluid motion from panel to panel. It's a very easy mistake to make, especially with a character running or something that isn't quite so action specific, to draw one panel of a character running and then the next panel of a character running with the same leg forward. In this case, I've got his right leg forward. So you really want to make sure, if you want it to read like action across panels, to switch out your sides. The next thing that I want to talk about is making sure that you're punching or kicking past the impact. And so I've got my character, he's punching. Put this arm up, and because I've got one arm extended, I'm pulling the other arm back, and it just pushes power through the body this way. That's something that we talked about in my dynamics video. You can find it in my YouTube library. And so I've got my character being hit and he's reacting to the punch. And hopefully that's enough detail that you can see what I'm trying to get across. The impact would be just about here, but I've got his arm extended all the way through, and it makes that punch much more powerful. I'll draw another example. Here's a character punching upwards. His arm is extended all the way up as he punches past, and my impact is going to be about here. And I'm going to take his line of action all the way through his body. So I'm going to lift this leg up. Keep this as simple as I can. Bring his head down just like this. And then my character being hit is also, my impact is here, but my character is being driven up by the punch. And so I'm going to draw him reacting to that punch. And his head is being shot backwards and impacted by that punch. And this really leads me to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, and that is making sure that when you have an impact, that the character reacting to that impact reacts in an appropriate way. And you can see that I'm going to angle his head, so it's at this point I would have to erase. But for this, that's going to be good enough to get the point across. He's punching through. The impact is going to be about here. His arm is extending all the way through that punch, and it's coming all the way from his foot. So he's got a line all the way through his body, and I did a similar thing with this character where his line is coming all the way through here. His face is what was impacted, and his face is being driven back just about the same speed as the punch is going through. And that really sells it as a punch that's incredibly powerful. And having the character that's being struck react appropriately really sells the whole action. And I'll show an example of what it can look like when you have a character punching and the character being hit is reacting in a way that doesn't match the punch or kick or whatever it is being thrown. In this case, it's just going to be a punch. And so I've got my character punching here, and I've got a character being hit by that punch, and I'm going to draw that character with his head pointing out this way so I can see here's his eyes, his nose, his mouth is open, and his head is being pushed around back this way. And I don't want to twist his head too far, so let's bring him here. Angle his body so his head could actually turn that way. That's something that's really important to learn, is the constraints that your body can go through. If you turn your neck too far or extend your arms too far back, it can look very wrong. So it's a good thing to get a good handle on. And so there's my character. Not the best drawing of a character, truthfully, but there's my character being hit, and it really looks like the impact is just being lost. It's missing something, and it can be a little bit difficult if you're not really aware of it to know what quite went wrong. And what went wrong is his head is being hit. It's going to be about here, and I've got his head driven back this way, but the punch is going this way, so the action would be pushing through here. And so in order to fix it, I'm just going to erase this character completely, and I'm going to draw my character. His head is twisted way up this way, mouth is open, and I've got his body kind of sideways. His other arm in here. And again, a terrible drawing, I know, but the point is that, I completely blew that one too. Let's try this again. And you know what? I think I want to leave this in. I blew that by drawing his head being shot up this way, and I still ended up not drawing my head reacting to that punch appropriately. And it's something that I do all the time. So I just try to be really aware of it, and when it happens, I fix it. And so I've got the punch going this way, so I really want the head to be following that punch. And so I'm going to draw the head coming around this way, so my eyes will be here. Angle his body just about here, because I don't want his head to be going past that angle of his body. I want to angle his body in an appropriate way, and it can be a little bit of a challenge to kind of get a good sense of exactly how far you can push this kind of thing. And so there's my character reacting to being hit, and I think I could actually make this even stronger. Let's fix that body, which is a little weak anyway. And I want to actually extend his body out this way and really push his whole body into that punch. And if I bring his center of gravity over here, it's really going to add to the impact that that punch has. And it's pushing his whole body out into the punch. So there, I think that's a little bit better. And let's angle his head down toward the character he's punching. This is why it's so important to get all of this stuff established before you start putting in detail, because you really don't want your character to be punching and then looking upward this way, away from the character that they're punching. And so hopefully you can see just how easy it is to make that kind of a mistake. Even in fixing it, I ended up making a mistake that was just about the same, I think just about as bad as I did the first time. And so the next thing that I want to talk about, I'm going to draw a punch, and this is just going to be from the side. We'll start with the head of the character that's punching. He's got his arm extended. And he's punching a character, and that character is right here. You can see that this shot really doesn't have a lot of impact at all. The character being hit is really not reacting much to that punch, and because I'm showing the actual impact, it's a little more difficult to really get action across. And you know what, let me go ahead and fix this whole thing. I want to make sure that my character being punched, and maybe it'd be a little easier if I draw the character first. I want them to be about level. I don't want one character way down below. Even though this is a little simple sketch, I want it to be at least somewhat accurate. Here's my fist. A lot of times I find it's easier for me to draw arms, things like that. If I've got something specific going on with the hand, to draw that first and then draw through the arm You just need to make sure that your distance is correct so you don't end up drawing a really short or long arm. And so there's my impact. And you can see it really doesn't have any power behind it at all. And that's to a large extent because we're only seeing the impact. We're not seeing any kind of reaction to it, and so it just looks very inert. But you can actually do this and really make it work, and I will show you how. I'll show you a couple of examples. First of all, I'm going to start by making my character throwing that punch just a little bit more dynamic. So here's my fist. Here's my head being struck, same way that I did before. I'm going to bring his other arm up just a little bit more, just make it a little bit more powerful. I'm extending his punch through a little bit more. I'm going to bring his body back this way, and that brings his center of gravity forward. And when that happens, it's bringing more weight forward. And so it makes it a little more powerful. This would still work even if I had drew the figure the way that I did the first time. But using your center of gravity for your figure always has such a good effect. I don't want to not use that. And so here's my basic punch. Here's my character being hit. And the secret behind making this powerful, even though you're looking at the exact impact, is for me to take my whole body, and I want my impact to be through here. And so I can consider this to be a point where I want the rest of my figure to be deflecting from. And so I'm going to draw his whole body. I'm going to extend his arm out, his other arm through the neck here, and his whole body is really reacting to that punch much more strongly. And you can see just by really using this kind of a triangular shape pointing at the exact point of impact, it pushes that power from here all the way through to the back of the figure, and it pulls that whole figure, and it gives it that extra impact that you need to really sell that punch, even though you're showing that point of impact, which is generally speaking not the most ideal way to go, but it can be pretty powerful if it's done properly. I'm going to show you another example. In this example, I've got a character, I'm going to have him kicking another character. And the reason why I like using this kind of a technique so much is because generally speaking, kicks don't make another character fly in the same way. They really impact into a character, and I feel like they're more powerful that way. Extend his arm back out this way. His other arm, I'll just put about here. And so here's my character kicking, and my other character is going to be reacting to that kick. Well, I know that I'm going to want my point of impact to be out here. I'm going to have him kicking the other character basically right in the gut, between his stomach and his chest, I guess. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, and this is where it can be really helpful to draw your torso as a bit of a, and I've seen this, I think Andrew Loomis did this, but you draw your torso as like a sack of potatoes, and it's something you can really get a lot of movement and play from. And what I really want to get from this is pushing that movement through the center, I guess, of that sack of potatoes, and push the action through it like this. And so here's my chest. I'm going to draw my arm up through. My head's going to be here. My other arm, my pelvis. And just kind of finish out the rest of his body. But I'm making sure to draw my character being impacted all the way through by that leg, and that really pushes power through and makes it very, very impactful, as opposed to just drawing a character flying away from that kick, which can work, but I think it's less powerful, or a character that's just not reacting to it properly the way that I did this here. The next thing I want to talk about is a bit of a limitation when it comes to hand-to-hand fighting, and that is that you're really throwing a lot of punches, and it can get very, very static if you choose the same angles continually. And so I want to show the same basic punch. It's not really going to be exactly the same, but it's going to be thrown with the same arm, punching another character in the face, and I'm going to show it from a few different angles. So in this angle, we're going to be looking up at the scene. So we're looking up at the character that's punching, his arm is coming through. The character that's being hit is going to be here. And so there's a punch from a bit of an upward angle. I don't know that my proportions are exact there, but that'll basically get the idea across. And so we're kind of looking up at my character punching, and this character is flying back toward us. So he should be actually probably a little bit larger because he's closer to us, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave it like that. I'm going to draw the same basic punch, and now we're going to be looking downward at our character. So I'm going to draw his chest here, his head here. You're looking down at kind of the top of his chest for shorten this way. His arm's going to extend out like this. So basically the same general movement that I had going on here. I've drawn this a couple times already just in the last few minutes. And my character being hit is going to be, we're going to be looking much more downward at that character also. And I want to make sure that his face is looking toward where the punch is pushing through. And then we'll draw a bit more of a sidelong angle, but also have some foreshortening coming toward us. And that's something that can be very powerful in a panel. I'm going to have this arm coming toward us, so the hand gets larger. My head is going to be just about here. My other arm extended backward. So there's my basic figure, and then the character being punched is going to be just about here. I think angle his head just, otherwise I'm going to have to angle his whole body to match that head. And I want his body to be just a little bit more facing the character that's punching him. And I've got that punch coming through. My point of impact is going to be here. And I've drawn that for short and coming toward us in the whole scene from the side. And I'm drawing essentially the same shot. I think the angle is slightly different. It's not like I'm trying to be 3D perfect with this, but it's really important for me to be able to draw a basic punch from multiple different angles. And that way I can draw a fight scene. And obviously I'd want to change up the sides so I don't go panel to panel to panel with the same punch being thrown. But I can show a lot of different action and keep it really exciting visually, even though I'm showing essentially the same basic movement. And the next thing I want to show, this is more of a really conceptual thing than anything, but I'm going to show a character and he's got a sword in his hand and he's stabbing into another character. And I've got my sword coming out through here. And depending on the kind of comic that you're drawing, it's not always ideal to really show violence to such an extent. And I know that I've done it certainly in the past, but a lot of times, especially if things get a little bit more graphic, I always feel like a really good technique to use is just to silhouette it out. And obviously I would work out my figures a little better than this before I start drawing it in silhouette. But as long as I make sure that my action is clearly readable, I can just silhouette out a scene like this and I can get away with some violence that might be a little bit more disturbing without making my comic overly graphic or something that is, you know, too disturbing, especially for a younger reader. This is something I like to use quite a bit if I've got somebody doing something that is just a little bit more extreme. So now that we've covered some basics, I wanted to draw a scene that really brings it all together. Especially when you're drawing a team book, you can get in a script a description that will say, I want this character fighting this character, and this character fighting this character, and these characters fighting another character, and it all needs to be in the same panel, and it all needs to work. And that can be incredibly stressful, trying to figure out how to get all those things working in a panel and showcase everything to the best of your ability. And so I've found over the years the best way for me to do this is to basically break down my panel into a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. And so for this one, for my foreground, I'm just going to create a bit of a shape like this, very, very simple. And that's going to be the block where I put my most important character fighting my most important villain. Right here will be my main character, my villain will be here, but generally I want them to take up that space here. And then I've got a character fighting multiple characters, and I'm going to put them into my midground. So I'm going to create a bit of another shape just like this. It's going to be its own composition here. And then in the background, I've got another character fighting another villain. And so I'm going to block out that space for them here. And going foreground, so these would be larger, then a little smaller and a little smaller, and they each take up their own really simple compositional space. It makes it very easy for me to lay out a panel like this. And so now that I have my basic shape design, I don't need to worry about all of the characters that I've got fighting here, the characters that I have fighting here. All I need to do is draw my foreground characters and make sure they take up generally the space. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that in my panel here. And that's going to be about the shape that I want to take up for this. And I'm just going to go ahead and start to rough in my figures here. So I've got a character punching another character. I'm going to draw them fairly large because we're in the foreground here. I want that arm kind of coming toward me, so it's going to be a little foreshortened. We did an example like this just a minute ago, and I think that's going to work. I'm just being really loose with this right now just to get this across. Very simply, I'm going to draw his other hand here, rough in his head shape. So I've got his line for his brow, his nose, his lower jaw, forehead here. And this is where you really start to just have to bring all of these skills that you learn, how to draw heads, how to draw all these different things, and it needs to just become second nature, so you can just very quickly and easily sketch in these characters, get the detail in, and get it finished to a schedule. And so there's my basic character right here, and my character being punched, I'm going to put here. I've got to have extended a little bit past the line there, but I think that'll be fine. Mouth is open. Maybe I'll have some teeth flying out. It's amazing how you can get away with drawing a character with their teeth flying out, and the next panel they're in there. No one ever says anything. I do try not to do that. I've done it. And so there's my character being punched. I'm going to draw his other hand in here. I want to fill this area in. And so there's his other arm, my brow, my nose. My jaw is going to be quite a bit longer because I've got the mouth open. My forehead, ear. I want to extend the neck out this way. So maybe I'll bring his whole body over just a little bit more so I can really get a good movement going this way. And there's going to be the rough-in for my foreground. And it's very loose and sloppy, but it's really what you need to just get that established. And so it's in the scene. And so now from there, in my little layout here, I've got a larger area. I don't know that it's larger, but considering it's in the foreground, it's a large area. I'm going to put multiple characters in here. I'm going to have a secondary character, and let me block that overall shape in. I want to leave a decent amount of space up here for my last bit of action in the background, and I'm going to draw a character fighting a whole bunch of characters. I'll have my character fighting a bunch of ninjas. Really, I have characters in mind for these drawings, but they're Marvel characters, and I don't want to, I don't know that it's a problem for me to draw just Marvel characters for a tutorial. I'm sure that it probably wouldn't be, and I mean, Marvel has always been incredibly good to me, and they're, you know, they're very easy to work with, but I don't want to push it either, and so for the sake of this, they're just characters for right now. And I think I'm going to finish this out and do a full complete drawing of this, and I'll just kind of create my own costumes so they're not licensed characters. So I've got my next character here, and I think this character is going to be slashing, so I'm going to flatten his hand out sideways, and I'll give him like a blade like this and another one like that. Mouth is open, so you can see that it's quite a bit smaller than this character here, and I'm going to draw a bunch of characters around him. They're all fighting them. So I've got a character down here. These are my ninjas. I've got an arm here. Another character here flying back. He's being slashed. I'm just really roughly laying these guys in right now. I think I'll draw another character here, and I'm kind of coming off of my line, I guess, but nothing strict. It's kind of, I just go with whatever feels like it's going to fill out that space, and, you know, if it's going to work for me, then I try to go in with a plan. But it's like the famous saying, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And when you're drawing a scene like this, with a lot of people being punched in the face, you'll find artistically that will happen to you. It's very difficult to not just start throwing in things where it's going to fit in order to make the panel work. I'm going to draw another character closer here. So he's going to be a bit more close into the, like almost the foreground here, but it's not going to conflict with the foreground. And I'll make sure that he's further back than my foreground. I just want to bring this portion out here. I'm going to draw maybe another ninja, and he's laying on the ground. He's already been defeated. Maybe another one here. And I'm just really quickly roughing these in just to get a general sense of my placement. He's got a sword in his hand. This one, he's got his hand up. He's had a sword in his hand, but it's flown out of his hand, so I'll draw it like this, up in the air. And then I'll have another couple of characters. Here's one swooping in from above, dropping in from above. They're ninjas, so this is what they do. Another one here. And don't worry about how poorly these are drawn right now. That's really not the point. The point is just to get all of these sorted in. I'm going to draw another character back here. I really want to fill this whole area in with as much as I can. I'm going to draw another ninja climbing up here toward the scene, just kind of filling out this overall shape. And I think that's going to do it for my midground. Another character lying here. And then for my last two characters, I'm going to draw one character up here. He's being grabbed by a bunch of tentacles, so, you know, that probably narrows down who I'm thinking about for this character. I'm going to have another leg up. His arms are back. He's in agony. And I think I might have drawn him just a little bit too big. You know what? Nah, I think he's all right. I want to make sure that this character and the character that he's fighting are smaller than these characters. It doesn't matter if they're smaller than everyone, but I do want to differentiate these planes generally. And so I've got this character about that big. I think that's going to work. And then I've got my character that's attacking, and here he is. He's coming in. Fix those legs. It's looking a little stiff. He's off the ground, and he's got his tentacles coming out. They're wrapping around. And just as a general design, that's kind of what we want here. And so I'm going to draw basically like a rock formation. You can imagine after superheroes have been fighting for a while, you get a lot of rubble. Some stuff here. And then in the background now, I could think in terms of, I've got my horizon just about here. So I'm going to draw a point just directly in the center, and I could start to draw in some buildings and some detail behind. But really, for a scene like this, that's actually a bit of a secondary thought. So here's my general perspective coming out here. And I would really establish these characters first and then worry about the background. But I need to make sure before I do that I have a general plan of where it's going to be. So if I know generally my horizon's about here, I can rough that in, and it gives me enough. And you can see how quickly and easily you can get a layout for a very, very complex scene. I think this took me less than 15 minutes to draw this, and now it's just detail, and I can go ahead and really get something finished out fairly easily without having to worry about this overall design. I've made sure that my major characters, here's one here, one hero here, one hero here, and then the other one here, and they're all very well showcased. I can see all the action that's happening, nothing's really conflicting, and they're all taking up their own space, and I've established a foreground, middle ground, and background very cleanly, and I just did it using really, really simple shapes. All right, that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Check out my Gumroad where you can find this complex action scene drawn from start to finish, from a simple layout all the way through to completion, with commentary and all of my thoughts that go into making sure that everything reads as clearly as possible and has a pleasing overall look.